Good afternoon. Welcome to Studio One on this Thursday, October 8th. It's been a while, but we're back for a second season and looking forward to highlighting all kinds of interesting personalities and perceptions. I'm Tom Buring, and joining us today is a man who contributed directly to an era labeled perhaps one of the ugliest in American history. John Salter served as a driving force in the Jackson, Mississippi civil rights upsurge in the early 60s. He'll be with us. We'll also hear from author Jamie Gilson, numerous award winner of several books in children's literature. And on our Open Door segment, a concert clip from the Police. But first, with every edition of Studio One, we go to the news desk with Courtney Bateman. Courtney?
Thank you, Tom. California shook again last night. An earthquake measuring 3.4 on the Richter scale hit just north of Palm Springs, a week after a large earthquake struck the Los Angeles area and killed 6 people. Governor Sinner says economic development is the key to improving education in the state. The governor told a Grand Forks audience yesterday that the state can't afford to spend much more on education. Meanwhile, the state's manufacturing climate may not be as bad as some thought. Most of the businesses answering a recent questionnaire said their business is growing. Most of them also say the state should help them with tax breaks or financing, or should help find new markets. But a few say the state shouldn't do any more than it is. That pretty much sums up the question of economic development in the state. Just what is it, and how much should government do? Studio One reporter Gail Carlson went looking for answers.
Economic development is on the tips of many tongues these days as we find ourselves surrounded by headlines, answers, and definitions. We see it, we hear about it, but what exactly is economic development? To House Majority Leader Earl Strinden, economic development is any growth that increases job opportunities. To Strinden, economic development has become a buzzword, and he compares it to a covey of prairie chickens taking a dust bath.
It looks like something is really happening. Dust is flying, wings are flapping, there's a lot of cackling. But when it all settles down, really, it was all non-productive activity.
But to Grand Forks Mayor Bud Westman,
economic development means a lot of things to a lot of people. Obviously, to me, it can be summed up in one word, and that word is jobs.
A national survey concludes that North Dakota has the most favorable business climate. Both Strinden and Westman agree that the quality of life and the legendary work ethic offers a combination that's very unique to North Dakota. But that's where most of the agreement ends. From there on, opinions differ widely on how to achieve economic development. Strinden says providing a favorable business climate is the #1 responsibility of the government.
Government must make sure that we are creating a favorable tax climate to enhance the ability of a business to make a profit.
But in Grand Forks, economic development will come from more than tax breaks. Mayor Westman says over $1 million will be available in 1989 for private industry as leverage.
We can use that money to leverage, as I would say, to leverage from the standpoint of either finding buildings for new corporations or assisting present Grand Forks businesses to expand, to assist them with that money.
And there is more difference of opinion. Mike Maidenberg, Vice Chairman of the Grand Forks Region Economic Development Foundation, says staying in touch with the existing local businesses and keeping them happy is the key to economic development. One other thing everyone does agree on is that economic development is not something you can sit back and wait for. They say economic development is something that is earned and not gained, but everyone has their own method of earning it. Gail Carlson, Studio One.
And finally, yesterday was the 138th anniversary of Edgar Allan Poe's death. Fans of his gathered in the cellar of a Philadelphia row house the poet used to live in and read the climax of his poem, The Black Cat, by candlelight. Tom?
Thank you, Courtney. There is a definite nip in the air as we welcome fall apparently moving in on us fast. A warmer welcome, however, is in store for our own new Studio One meteorologist, Jay Searles, who's here to give us a look at the weather. Jay?
Thanks, Tom. As of 4 p.m., the sky is partly cloudy, the temperature is 55 degrees, the relative humidity is 57%, the winds are northwest at 15 miles per hour. Taking a look at the surface map across the nation, you can see yesterday's high was 106 in Yuma, California, and the nation's low this morning was 19 degrees in Gunnison, Colorado. On the east coast, we have a retreating storm system moving off the coast, which is bringing precipitation through the southern Great Lakes, in the eastern Great Lakes, and southern Quebec. And in the southeast, temperatures are mild this afternoon under an area of high pressure. Sunny skies, temperatures are 70s and the 60s. Across the west, another area of high pressure which is breaking down as the storm system moves in. Temperatures have cooled off, though, after the week's high temperatures and record-setting high temperatures. Temperatures were in the hundreds and are now in the 60s and the 70s. In the central part of the nation, and around our area, in the tri-state area, we have a large, early, intense winter storm system, which is bringing some colder conditions through southern Canada. Snow has broken out through Saskatchewan and southern Manitoba and Ontario, with as much as 10 inches reported in central Saskatchewan. Winds have increased over the western Dakotas. This cold front drags down right over Grand Forks, through Nebraska and up through Idaho. Winds are southerly out ahead. Temperatures are in the 50s over in Grand Forks and northern Minnesota, 40s behind in South Dakota and North Dakota. Trough drags down through the central United States. That's the surface map for today. The weather for today, I'll be back later with a look at the forecast. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Jay. The Winter Sports Center will break in the ice this weekend with fun for just about every age. Stars on Ice will be performing Saturday evening at 7:30. Headlining the event will be former Olympic skaters Scott Hamilton, Dorothy Hamill, and Rosal Sumners. All seats reserved and tickets are available through the Chester Fritz and all Centig outlets. When we return, a man who modestly assumes the title of community organizer, but who paid the price for it by being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Meet him next on Studio One.
Did you know that almost 1/5 of our Navy is made up of civilians who leave their jobs on a moment's notice to help defend our country? They are members of the Naval Reserve. They take time off from their jobs to help defend our country. But for them to do that job right, they need time to train. If you're an employer, give them the time they need. With your help, our country will remain strong and ready. Support the National Guard and Reserve. Protect their future while they protect yours.
How does this man consistently draw 2,000 students a year to New York's most talked about film class? How does he attract the finest creative talent in the film world? Guests like Woody Allen, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese, Dustin Hoffman, Deborah Winger, William Hurt, Steven Spielberg, Robin Williams, Robert Redford, Shirley MacLaine, just to name a few? Why do his students describe him as brilliant, charismatic, and his class provocative, inspiring, exhilarating? Find out for yourself. Richard Brown's Screening Room, a whole new way to look at movies. Watch it on NCTV.
From what he had to endure, he may have been at the wrong place at the wrong time, but in 1962 in Jackson, Mississippi, John Salter was a catalyst to organizing the grassroots civil rights upsurge. Notoriously identified with participating in one of the bloodiest sit-ins, he has since continued his pursuit of social injustice through what he calls thoughtful aggravation. John, it's good to have you. We appreciate you taking the time.
Nice to be here.
Now, for folks that may not immediately identify with one of the bloodiest sit-ins in history, we've got a shot for him here that we want to go to. Can you describe to me what took place, when this was, where it was, and what took place?
Took place on the 28th of May, 1963 in the Woolworth store in Jackson, Mississippi, when several of us sought service on an interracial basis at a segregated lunch counter. We were attacked by a mob, which actually operated with the open permission of the Jackson City Police. A number of people were injured, and the whole thing was very well televised, went around the world, as a matter of fact, on TV.
And you were the one on the far,
Right,
closest to the
yeah.
photograph.
The photograph is famous, but I think it's worth pointing out that the mob violence intended to discourage participation in the movement actually stimulated large-scale grassroots black participation and support for our efforts. People came forward, they didn't retreat.
John, excuse me, few people realize what you had to endure during that time. You've had your life nearly snuffed away. You've lost one of your closer friends was murdered. Despite all that, would you still say it was worth it? Was it a success? Was the outcome a success?
Oh, it was well worth it. From the standpoint of the mission, so to speak, it helped break the hard lines of resistance to social change in places like Mississippi, opened things up to the desegregation process, set in motion the forces which made it possible for people to demonstrate and vote, curbed and eventually eliminated open terrorism. From a personal standpoint, both my wife and myself feel that we were very fortunate in being at that particular place at that precise historical moment that we were able to reach out and grab history and make something of a contribution, along with a lot of other people, to feathering out the democratic dream in America.
You explained to me an experience that you had that I found quite interesting. You went back to Mississippi, worked with the Department of Mississippi State Archives, and went back through 50 miles of footage to identify places, times, and events that took place during that time. You're telling me you went through all this footage, brought back a rush of emotions, you folded up the books, went out to eat lunch, and experienced culture shock.
That's true.
Are we ever beyond ourselves to think that that could never happen again?
Well, I don't think that kind of thing will happen again in that sense. But I do feel that there are many significant social justice issues still remaining in the United States. There's a good deal of racism, prejudice, discrimination, an enormous amount of economic inequity. And I do believe that in the years to come, the latter part of this decade and well into the 90s, that we'll see a large-scale grassroots upsurge, very similar to the civil rights movement of the 60s, the labor movement in the 30s, and that this will be, to I'd say, a significant extent, interracial and intercultural, focused on economic issues primarily.
John, is this generation apathetic or indifferent towards social injustice?
I think it's essentially non-engaged. I don't think that people in their late teens and 20s and early 30s are oblivious to social justice issues. It's just simply that in the last several years, there has not been that much happening openly and publicly that could reach out and grab them. Mm-hmm. But I certainly don't feel that they're without conscience, social sensitivity, and I believe there's a good deal of potential.
John, quickly, does it frustrate you from not being able to be out on the front lines and to be a professor when you have such a motivation for civil rights?
Well, interestingly enough, pleasant as the University of North Dakota is, the setting here and around includes many social justice issues. And so as I've taught here at the university for the past 6 years, I have found a number of things in which to be engaged. We've worked to make the police department more responsive to minority concerns, and I'm happy to say that the new police chief, Chet Paschke, has been very cooperative. We've been involved in defending civil liberties, for example, the Warner Native American church cases, and many other things.
John Salter, we appreciate the time.
Nice to be here.
Good to have you. John Salter, professor, community organizer, thoughtful aggravator. After this, a concert clip on our Open Door segment, so stay with us.
We give you the truth. Uncensored. Powerful documentaries every week.
South Africa belongs to all the people who live in it, not to one group, be it black or white.
I'm too old. I'm too fat.
We're a long way from equality in any field.
Uncensored. Discover it every week on NCTV.
With every edition of Studio One, we go beyond our studio to bring you a selected feature for the week. Today, on our Open Door segment, we'll look and listen from the world of Sting. From the Omni in Atlanta, here's the Police. Sting, the Police, the King of Pain. Plenty of pain this weekend, just a question of who'll be dishing it out on who. As national champions, the Fighting Sioux open their hockey season tomorrow night and Saturday night in Michigan against Michigan Tech. Also on the road, Fighting Sioux football in Mankato, taking on Mankato State on Saturday. When we return, we'll meet award-winning children's author Jamie Gilson, here on Studio One.
In our country, where physical illness gets the most advanced medical treatment, a disease that affects 35 million Americans goes virtually untreated.
Why don't you just get up and pull yourself together? Snap out of it.
The disease is mental illness, a disease that's often misunderstood, so its victims wind up neglected, isolated.
There is nothing more I can do for you.
But mental illness can be treated once you learn to see the sickness. For an informative booklet, call the American Mental Health Fund.
Beginning today and running through tomorrow is the 8th Annual Writers' Conference in Children's Literature. Several authors will be speaking focusing on writing, publishing, and evaluating literature for children. Jamie Gilson launched her writing career with the award-winning Harvey the Beer Can King in 1978. Her latest book produced this year is Hobie Hansen, You're Weird. Now, Jamie, it's good to have you, but whatever happened to titles like Cat in the Hat?
I choose my titles very carefully because children often pick up a book by not only what's on the cover, but what the title is. And my titles tend to be a little strange so that the child will want to open the book and find out how it starts. Then, of course, I have to get him in the first paragraph. But they're funny books, and so the titles are funny.
And what age specifically do you write for? Do you write for the same age?
Yes, I write almost always for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. Stories that have, that will make kids laugh. Things about pie-eating contests and summer camp and about last days of school and things that children will recognize and things that I hope will make them giggle at least.
Is that age an easy audience to write for?
It's not easy to put things over on them. You can't be phony with them. They're a very straightforward group. And not really easy, in fact, but I like them as a group. I teach writing workshops to 6th graders so that I know them. I think that to write for a certain group of children, you have to know what it is they're reading and what it is they're thinking about.
And you're a mom. Now, I want to ask you this.
Yes.
When you started writing, was it a mother who needed to ensure her kids would get good quality reading, or were you an author wanting to write?
A little of both. I had written for radio and had written Encyclopedia Britannica films, educational films. So I had written before, but it's hard finding books for boys. Most writers, in fact, of children's books are women, and they tend to have girls as main characters. And it is harder finding books that interest boys. And all of my books are told first person as a boy 10 and 11 years old, which is what my boys were when I started writing.
Are the characters in your book, are they children?
Oh, almost all of them children, sure. They are children who try to, well, one of them is called 13 Ways to Sink a Sub. And it is a 4th grade class who try to get the best of their substitute teacher.
Ooh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. And 4B Goes Wild. That's the same 4th grade class who go on outdoor education. So I learn about these things by going into schools and doing research, simply going and writing down what kids are doing.
How in the world do you compete with movies and special effects and Steven Spielberg? How do you get a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old to sit in a chair and read?
Well, by making things move.
And how do you do that?
A lot of things happening. I do it by writing to their funny bones and by keeping enough in touch with them that I know what it is they're thinking about that makes them laugh. I know the songs they're singing that make them laugh about Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, you know that one?
Robin laid an egg.
That's exactly right, exactly right. And I put them in and they see them and they recognize them and they keep writing. I write about cootie shots, you know that? Girls pretend to give each other cootie shots when boys touch them. You know, fourth grade. You know, you don't want to be touched by a boy, and so I find about things that they can really recognize, and they read them, and it's always kind of exciting for me to know that they like them and want more.
Did it take you long to find that key to work?
It takes me long every time. It's never really that easy. But I just finished another one that won't be out until next year, and it is in part about the Gifted Child program, and it is, I hope, funny.
Really, really, really short. Almost a couple words.
Yes.
What's the market like for children books?
Oh, children are reading more and more. It is not at all slack because of television.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yes, it is.
Jamie Gilson, thank you so
terrific.
much for being with us. Children's author Jamie Gilson. We'll be back with more Studio One after this.
I do like music, very much.
Pick something groovy, Alex.
Don't be a fool, Alex. Pick Audiophilia, the best concert show around. Every week a new concert. Motown, rock, new music, folk, funk, and a whole lot more. Audiophilia, every week on NCTV.
Swell.
Clint Eastwood is a little upset.
Seems some misguided individuals out there are abusing our public lands, and I don't like it. And I don't think you do either. Vandalizing parks and robbing historic sites, or overrunning wild areas, those are ours, and we have to save them. As I see it, these clowns can either clean up their act or get out of town.
Write Take Pride in America. Post Office Box 1339, Jessup, Maryland 20794.
Now, I don't know about you, but to me it feels like football weather. However, with the Twins playing baseball in October, all the more reason to stay inside. Jay Searles is here to give us one last look at our weather. Jay?
Thanks, Tom. Taking a look at the forecast map for tomorrow morning, we see that area of low pressure that it was over the South Dakota has moved over northern Wisconsin, bringing back some intense winds over eastern Minnesota, some cooler temperatures. The cold front will have pushed all the way down through the central United States. Temperatures will be tomorrow morning 28 here in Grand Forks, 23 in Fargo, and temperatures will be even cooler through southern Canada, Manitoba. Temperatures will be warmer closer to the front. Taking a look at our forecast in extent, tonight we can expect very windy conditions with a slight chance of snow. Temperatures will be in the upper 20s by Friday morning. The high Friday will be 36, and the winds will be northwesterly at 15 to 25 miles per hour, decreasing by late afternoon. Lows Friday night will be in the low 20s Saturday and Sunday, and will be milder temperatures in the mid-40s. That's the forecast. I'm meteorologist Jay Searles. Have a great weekend. Tom?
Flurries. No. We'd like to thank our guests John Salter and Jamie Gilson for being with us today. From all of us here at Studio One, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.